The Wild Law of Silent Park. The boy called Asher was 12 years old, but his home was not measured in square feet or paved streets. His home was the Silent Park, a vast forgotten wilderness sealed off from the city by a 10-foot Victorian wall. He lived high up, perched on a crumbling stone gargoyle that peered over the endless tangled green. From this height, the distant towers of the city looked like cold, straight teeth. But here, Asher felt only the fierce, independent satisfaction of the wild. Asher had been little more than a bundled-up memory when Vesper, the great she-dog leader of the park's pack, had found him. It was a cold night, and the rain was a steady rhythm on the old oak's canopy. She didn't know why the man-cub was there, only that he was small and needed the warmth of her den, woven from moss and the root snarl of the ancient tree. She licked his head, and he was hers. To survive, Asher needed the law. It was Sable, the sleekest, darkest black cat in the city's 3 counties, who taught him. The law of the park, Sable would hiss, his voice like rustling silk, is that the park is silent because it provides. Take only what you need, but always know your enemy and never forget your way back. Asher, at 8, absorbed every syllable, sketching the rules in the dirt with a piece of charcoal. His lessons in joy came from Guffaw, the largest, shaggiest Newfoundland dog the park had ever claimed. Guffaw taught him the deep rest, the art of abandoning all worry, and the joy tumble, a magnificent, messy roll in the highest, sunniest grass. "Worry is a pebble in your paw, little Asher," Guffaw would rumble, his laughter a great, hearty thing. "Shake it off." But there was a shadow in the silent park, a fear that stalked the hidden paths. His name was Grim. Grim was a scarred, lean, feral dog, whose one good eye burned with a cold, malevolent jealousy. He despised the man-cub, claiming Asher's human scent was an affront to the purity of the wild, and he waited for the day the boy would slip to prove his fear right. One morning, Sable led Asher to the remnants of the old Victorian glass houses, a maze of broken panes and rusted metal overgrown with tenacious ivy. "A quick paw is a silent paw," Sable whispered, demonstrating the art of hunting. He moved across the crumbling floor like ink flowing on damp paper. Asher struggled to keep up, practicing his breathing and foot placement, his face a mask of deep concentration. Later, out in the open, Guffaw called for a joy tumble. Guffaw would charge into the tall grass, a massive, joyful blur, inviting Asher to wrestle him down. It wasn't a fight. It was a rough, warm game of connection, a lesson that even the mightiest creatures submit to laughter. Asher, surrounded by the golden, sun-dappled grass, felt the easy, unconditional love of his second father. The problem was that Asher was no longer just cub. He was growing taller, his thoughts were becoming more complex, and his hands were beginning to fiddle with the man-things he found. Today, it was a small, broken-down electronic device, covered in moss and dirt, that he'd unearthed near a hidden well. He turned it over and over, struggling to understand the cold, straight geometry of its purpose. From the high ridge overlooking the hollow, Vesper watched her son. The device in his hand, the distant towers in his eyes, they were both a betrayal and an inevitability. Her protective instincts warred with a primal sadness. She knew a time was coming when the wilderness inside him would not be enough to contain the growing human within, her brow furrowed with deep, maternal worry. That night, the animals of the silent park gathered in the basin of the forgotten fountain for their council. The air was thick with the scent of pine and old stone. Vesper spoke first, her voice a low, steady growl. She argued for Asher's right to stay, defending his adherence to the law. But her voice held a note of desperation that had never been there before. Grim launched his attack. He is no longer a cub. He carries the scent of man. He touches the trinkets of the man village. Soon, he will bring their terrible red flower. Fire. To burn our park. He must be cast out before he destroys us all. His words were poisoned with malice, sowing fear among the nervous, shadowy creatures. But Asher had two powerful defenders. Sable, perched calmly on the cracked edge of the fountain, countered Grimm's fear with cold logic, reminding the council of Vesper's sacrifice. Guffaw stood his ground, a massive, unmoving presence between Vesper and Grimm, a low, constant rumble of warning deep in his chest. The two mentors, one sleek and one shaggy, stood united. The decision, however, was inevitable. Asher was becoming a man. The law required him to leave the park for his own safety and theirs. It was Sable who had to deliver the painful news, sitting next to Asher on a damp, moss-covered log. The time of shadows is ending, little one. The sun calls for you beyond the wall. Sable's voice was gentle, but the finality of the words was a heavy blow. Asher's denial was a sudden, white-hot fury. He couldn't be a man, he was Asher. The park was his skin, his breath, his whole life. He turned his back on Sable and ran, tearing through a narrow, overgrown pathway, the familiar trees and thickets blurring into a chaos of green and gray. He ran until his chest ached with the effort and the sudden, crushing loneliness. Guffaw found him weeping quietly by the broken well. He didn't speak. He simply lay down and nudged Asher gently with his head, inviting the boy to lean against his warm, impossibly thick fur. Guffaw began to hum the song of the deep rest, a low, wordless melody that spoke of warmth and safety and the unconditional right to exist exactly as you are. As the first rays of morning light filtered through the canopy, Sable was guiding Asher toward the wall. The journey was slow and full of silent grief. Asher had carved a walking staff from a strong piece of driftwood, a simple tool of the park. Every rustle of a leaf, every familiar twist of the path, felt like a memory tearing away from him. The final brick barrier was growing larger in the distance. They were almost there, in a clearing near a collapsed section of the wall, when Grimm emerged from the shadows of a pile of broken masonry. His eye glittered with malicious triumph. You will not leave. You will not join them. You will die in the park you betrayed. Grimm lunged, faster than a striking snake, aiming for the boy. Sable met the charge. The fight was a silent, furious blur of muscle and claw near the cold, unfeeling brick wall. Sable was swift, a master of feints and precision strikes, but Grimm was pure, feral muscle and rage. Asher watched, momentarily frozen by the violence, the law of the park being broken before his eyes. Just as Grimm pinned Sable, a deafening, magnificent roar burst from the undergrowth. Guffaw had arrived, not to fight, but to distract. He burst through the trees like a hairy avalanche, scattering leaves and dirt high into the air, making a huge, terrifying spectacle of himself. The unexpected chaos momentarily broke Grimm's concentration. In that heartbeat of distraction, Asher's mind cleared. He looked at his hand, then at his carved staff, then at the rusty, broken metal pipe half buried in the dirt near the wall. It was a man thing, cold and heavy, not of the park. He grabbed it, his knuckles white against the rough metal. It was a tool, not a weapon of the wild, but a weapon of man. With a burst of pure, reckless courage, Asher raised the pipe and brought it down sharply against the brick wall, a few inches from Grimm's head. The impact created a terrifying, ear-splitting screech and a shower of bright, startling sparks that illuminated the dark clearing. It was the red flower of the man village, a small, shocking facsimile of fire. Brim let out a sound of pure, instinctive terror. The red flower, the noise, the human cunning. It was too much for the animal fear in his heart. He broke off his attack, his tail clamped between his legs, and scrambled away, fleeing in a panic from the terrifying spectacle of man's power, disappearing into the deepest, darkest undergrowth. The danger was gone. The three stood together by the collapsed wall, the silent truth hanging heavy between them. Vesper walked forward, her head low, and nudged Asher's cheek one final time, a deep, mournful sound rumbling in her chest. It was a goodbye full of more love than any words could hold. Asher hugged her thick neck, burying his face in her fur, his eyes full of the painful, necessary tears of parting. With one last look at his first family, Sable watching from the shadows, the Foss slumped sadly near the wall, Asher stepped through the gap in the brick. The silent park vanished instantly behind him. He stood on a cracked pavement, facing the man village, a dazzling, confusing array of neon signs, the smell of cooked food, and the endless, rushing sound of human traffic. He felt a sudden, profound vertigo, but he did not turn back. Asher took a breath of the strange metallic city air, clutching his carved wooden staff and the knowledge of the park's law. Know your enemy, but never forget your way back. He was a creature of two worlds, no longer just a cub, but a man who understood the value of silence and the power of a joyful tumble. He began to walk, stepping onto the city pavement, towards the endless humming noise of his human fate, ready to draw his own wild blueprint on the concrete.